Meet John. He is 40 years old, married, and lives in a small ranch house outside Columbus, Ohio. He earns $94,000 a year as a logistics manager for a regional warehouse company. By every visible measure, he is doing fine. He has a 30-year mortgage at 6.3%. He has 2 daughters in elementary school. He drives a 2021 Toyota Highlander. But last Tuesday evening, John sat at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and ran a number that quietly broke him. He wanted $3,000 a month in dividend income. Enough to cover his mortgage, his property tax, and his car insurance. Enough to walk away from his job by 60. John opened a finance YouTube video and saw a thumbnail promising $3,000 a month from $100,000 investment. John thought he needed about $300,000 invested in a good dividend ETF to hit his number. He was wrong by a factor of 4. The real number is closer to $1.2 million. And the gap between what John believes and what the math actually says is the entire reason most people who chase dividend income end up disappointed, taxed, and stuck. The kitchen table where John ran that number is the same table where his father ran the same number in 1985 and came up with a different answer. The rules changed. The math did not. The dividend dream is everywhere on YouTube right now. $3,000 a month, $10,000 a month, passive income forever. The thumbnails promise it. The math almost never matches. Here is the only equation that matters in this entire video. Annual dividend income equals your invested amount multiplied by the dividend yield. That is it. There is no secret. There is no shortcut. There is no special ETF that bends arithmetic. If the yield is 3%, you need a lot of money. If the yield is 10%, you need less money, but you are usually taking a hidden loss somewhere else. Today, we are going to walk through 3 real income targets: $1,000 a month, $3,000 a month, $10,000 a month. We will run the numbers across 5 real dividend ETFs that you can buy on any brokerage today: SCHD, VYM, SPYD, JEPI, JEPQ. We will also walk through QYLD, which is where most dividend investors quietly lose money. And then we will show you the trap most dividend YouTubers refuse to mention. Because the trap is the entire reason the average dividend investor ends up with less money, not more. Here is what the data actually shows. Let me introduce you to 2 people. Meet Carla. Carla is 32 years old, single, and lives in a 1-bedroom condo in Tampa, Florida. She earns $78,000 a year as a data analyst. She's been investing since she was 22 years old. Her portfolio is $400,000. All of it sits in one ETF, Schwab U.S. Dividend Equity, ticker SCHD. Yield 3.2%. Boring, reliable, quarterly payouts. Carla checks her brokerage app exactly once a month on the 15th. She drinks her coffee. She looks at the green upward arrow. She closes the app. Now meet John again. John is 40, married, mortgage of $184,000 at 6.3%. 2 kids, $94,000 salary. He also has $400,000 invested. He started later. He felt behind. He decided to chase yield. His $400,000 sits in JP Morgan Equity Premium Income, ticker JEPI. Yield about 8%, loud, aggressive monthly payouts. Same money, same starting line, different ETF, different strategy. Run the numbers and the gap is bigger than either of them realizes. Carla earns about $12,800 a year in dividends, about $1,060 a month. John earns about $32,000 a year, about $2,660 a month. On paper, John is winning by a wide margin, 2.5 times more cash hitting his account every month. He brags about this at family barbecues. Carla does not brag at all. She just keeps buying SCHD on the 15th of every month like a machine. There is also a third person in this story you should meet, Diana. Diana is 34 years old, divorced, and works in healthcare administration in Phoenix. Diana earns $68,000 a year and has $19,000 in credit card debt at 24% interest. Diana wants to start dividend investing. Diana is going to learn something painful in the next 10 minutes. There is also Maya. Maya is 28, an attorney's associate in Denver, sitting on $48,000 in a high-yield savings account. Maya is asking the right question. Should I move some of this into dividends? Because the math nobody tells you is this. The math at year 1 is not the math at year 20. The high-yield investor and the dividend growth investor are running 2 completely different races. Let us keep this fair and walk through every yield tier, every income target and every hidden cost. The numbers will surprise you. $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. This is the entry-level dividend target, enough to cover groceries for a family of 4, enough to feel real. Run the formula. 12,000 divided by yield equals the principal you need. At a 2.2% yield, which is what Vanguard High Dividend Yield VYM pays right now, you need $545,000. At 3.2%, which is SCHD, you need $375,000. At 4.8%, which is the SPDR portfolio S&P 500 High Dividend ETF SPYD, you need $250,000. At 8% JEPI, you need $150,000. At 11% JEPQ, you need $109,000. The headline looks simple. Higher yield means less principal. The catch comes later. For now, just notice the spread. The cheapest path to $1,000 a month requires $109,000. The most expensive path requires $545,000. That is a 5-fold difference based purely on which ETF you choose. Most people pick the wrong one. They look at the yield, do the simple division, and never look back. They never check the share price chart from 2013. They never read the prospectus. They never run the after-tax number. They buy the highest yield they can find and then act surprised 3 years later when the income is still the same, but the principal has shrunk by 20%. The yield was real. The income was real. But the wealth never built. $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. This is John's number. This is mortgage plus utilities money, the number that lets you walk away from your job in your 60s without panic. Run the formula. At VYM 2.2%, you need $1,636,000. At SCHD 3.2, you need $1,125,000. At SPYD 4.8, you need $750,000. At JEPI 8%, you need $450,000. At JEPQ 11%, you need $327,000. So when John looked at his kitchen table and thought $300,000 would do it, he was inside the JEPQ ballpark. He was not insane. He just was not pricing in the risk. The risk is what kills him. We will get there. For now, just sit with this. $3,000 a month is not a small number. Even at the highest realistic dividend yield, you need roughly the price of a starter home invested before the income starts flowing. The dividend growth investor needs over $1 million. The yield chaser needs $327,000. Same income on paper. Wildly different journeys. Same destination on the brokerage statement. Wildly different 10-year outcomes. $10,000 a month. $120,000 a year. This is full retirement money for most American households. This is the number the YouTube ads sell you. Run the formula. At VYM 2.2%, you need $5,450,000. At SCHD 3.2, you need $3,750,000. At SPYD 4.8, you need $2,500,000. At JEPI 8%, you need $1,500,000. At JEPQ 11%, you need $1,090,000. Even the most aggressive yield demands more than $1 million invested. The dividend growth path demands almost $4 million. This is why dividend income is not a get-rich-quick strategy. It is a get-rich-slow strategy that only works if you respect the math. Most people who chase $10,000 a month at age 30 are not investing. They are gambling. The math does not bend just because you want it to. The math does not bend because some YouTuber with a Lamborghini in his thumbnail says it bends. The math is the math. Annual income equals principal times yield. Every dollar of monthly income above your principal times yield ceiling is somebody else's lie. Here is what nobody tells you about high-yield ETFs. The yield can be a lie. Take QYLD. Global X NASDAQ 100 Covered Call ETF. The headline yield is roughly 11%. The fund pays you every month. The newsletters love it. The Reddit threads love it. The dividend trackers list it at the top of every ranking. Here's the catch. QYLD launched in late 2013 at $25 per share. Today it trades around $18 per share. That is a 28% decline in your principal. The fund is quietly handing you back your own money each month and calling it a dividend. NAV erosion runs about 2 to 3% every year. So the 11% yield is really an 8 or 9% yield once you subtract the principal loss. And the fund cannot recover because the covered call strategy caps the upside in every bull market. You get the crashes. You do not get the rallies. The math is brutal. If you put $100,000 in QYLD 10 years ago, your principal today is closer to $72,000. You collected dividends along the way, but you collected them out of your own balance. That is not income. That is liquidation, dressed up as a payout. This is the dividend yield trap, and it is everywhere. Any ETF advertising a yield above 10% deserves a forensic audit before you buy a single share. Open the chart. Look at the price 10 years ago. Look at the price today. If the line slopes downward, your dividends are coming from somewhere. They are coming from you. Same warning applies to yield-max single-stock covered call funds promising 50 and 60% yields. They are not income. They are slow-motion principal liquidation. Here is what nobody tells you about JEPI and JEPQ. The dividends are not qualified. The dividends are taxed as ordinary income. There is a difference, and the difference is enormous. Qualified dividends from SCHD or VYM get long-term capital gains rates, 15% for most people, 0% for low earners, 20% for the top bracket. That is the tax-friendly side of dividend investing. JEPI uses a structure called equity-linked notes. The premiums come back as interest-style income. The IRS taxes it at your marginal rate. That can be 22%. That can be 32%. For high earners, it can be 37%. So that 8% JEPI yield in a 32% bracket is really 5.5% after tax. The 10.9% JEPQ yield in the same bracket is really 7.4%. Suddenly, the high-yield ETF looks a lot less impressive. The fix is to hold these inside a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA where ordinary income tax does not bite. But almost nobody does this. Most retail investors buy JEPI in a taxable brokerage account and then wonder why their April tax bill is enormous. Their accountant calls in April and says you owe $9,000. They look at the brokerage statement and the dividends look identical to last year. Same yield, same monthly checks, but the after-tax number has quietly collapsed because every dollar is being taxed at the highest marginal rate available. JEPI in a taxable account is one of the most expensive mistakes a new dividend investor can make. There is one more cost most YouTubers skip, the expense ratio. VYM charges 0.04%, SCHD charges 0.06%. SPYD charges 0.07%. JEPI and JEPQ each charge 0.35%. The difference looks tiny. The difference compounds. On a $1 million portfolio over 20 years, paying 35 basis points instead of 6 basis points cost you about $90,000 in lost compounding. That is a starter sedan handed back to the fund manager, quietly, every year. The yield-chasing investor pays this cost without noticing. The dividend growth investor keeps the money in the compounding engine. Over decades, the expense ratio is silently one of the biggest decisions you will ever make. Most people compare ETFs on yield first, then they compare on dividend frequency. They almost never compare on expense ratio. They should compare on expense ratio first, because the yield can change next quarter, but the expense ratio is forever. The expense ratio is the only number on the prospectus the fund manager cannot change without telling you. Read it twice before you buy. Most dividend YouTubers compare dividend income against zero. That is the wrong comparison. The right comparison is against a total return portfolio that you sell from at 4% a year. The classic safe withdrawal rate. Here is the math. $400,000 in a broad index fund growing at 7% real return, withdrawn at 4% annually, produces $16,000 a year. That is $1,333 a month. Carla's SCHD position produces about $1,060 a month in dividends without selling a single share. The total return method gives you more income today but requires selling shares. The dividend method gives you slightly less income today but never touches the principal. Both work. Neither is magic. The choice is psychological more than mathematical. Most people pick dividend investing because they cannot emotionally handle selling shares in a down market. That is a fine reason. Just know that you are paying about a 20% income tax. For the comfort, the academics call this the dividend irrelevance theorem. Modigliani and Miller, 1961. A dollar of dividend is mathematically equivalent to a dollar of sold principal. The only difference is who pulls the trigger. The market pulls it with a dividend. You pull it with a sale. The cash hits your account either way. But behavior matters more than math for most people. Dividends are easier to live on than withdrawals. Now meet Diana again. Diana is the one with the $19,000 in credit card debt at 24%. Diana wants to start a dividend portfolio with $200 a month. Here is the brutal math. $200 a month in SCHD at a 3.2% yield earns Diana $6.40 per month in year one. $6.40. Meanwhile, Diana's credit card balance is generating $380 a month in interest charges. Diana is paying her credit card company $380 to earn $6.40 from SCHD. The math is upside down. Diana's first dividend move is not buying SCHD. Diana's first dividend move is killing the credit card balance. A 24% guaranteed return on debt repayment beats any dividend yield in existence. Once the credit card is gone, Diana has $380 a month to redirect into SCHD. Over 20 years at SCHD's historical 9.3% total return, that turns into roughly $260,000. At 42, she would have a real dividend stream. This is the order most dividend videos refuse to discuss. Pay off high-interest debt first, build the emergency fund second, only then start the dividend portfolio. Anyone who tells you to invest while carrying 24% credit card debt is selling you a fantasy. The fantasy costs Diana $373.60 every month she follows it. Now meet Maya. Maya is 28, works as an associate at a small law firm in Denver, earns $62,000 a year. Maya has $48,000 in a high-yield savings account at 4.3%. Maya is asking the right question. Should I move some of this into a dividend ETF? The high say pays her $172 a month risk-free. SCHD would pay her $128 a month with stock market risk. The dividend ETF earns less today. But the dividend ETF grows. The HISA does not. The HISA rate dropped from 5.1% to 4.3% in 18 months as the Federal Reserve cut rates. Maya is watching her risk-free yield slowly compress. Meanwhile, SCHD's dividend has grown 9.3% per year for a decade. In 5 years, Maya's HISA could be paying 3.5%. Maya's hypothetical SCHD position could be paying 4.2% on the original cost basis and rising every year. The HISA is a parking lot. SCHD is a vehicle. Both have a place. The mistake is parking your retirement money for 40 years in a savings account that loses purchasing power to inflation. Every 12 months. Here is what nobody tells you about SCHD. The yield today is 3.2%. The yield 10 years from now will not be 3.2%. It will be much higher. Because SCHD has grown its annual dividend at about 9.3% per year for the last decade. Starting at 22 cents per share in 2011, now paying $1.05 per share. That is almost a 5-fold increase in payouts. The investors who bought SCHD in 2011 now earn a yield on cost of roughly 12.5%, 12.5%, without taking any extra risk, without buying any new shares. Their original cost basis is just sitting there generating more and more income each year. This is the engine that high-yield ETFs cannot match. JEPI does not grow its dividend at 9% a year. Most years, JEPI's dividend is actually declining. The yield stays high because the share price drops with it. SCHD grows the dividend faster than inflation. The principal grows. The yield on the original investment compounds. This is the entire point of dividend growth investing, and it is the reason patient money beats impatient money over 20 years. Here is how the disciplined investor actually does this. 3 buckets. Bucket 1 is 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. That is roughly $25,000 for most Americans. Bucket 2 is taxable brokerage holding SCHD and VYM, qualified dividends. Long-term capital gains rates, tax efficient. Bucket 3 is Roth IRA holding JEPI or JEPQ if you want the higher yield. Ordinary income tax does not apply inside the Roth wrapper. The yield works for you tax-free. Most retail investors do this in exactly the wrong order. They buy JEPI in a taxable account and SCHD in their Roth. Then they wonder why their tax bill explodes and their Roth compounds slower than expected. The fix is to flip them. SCHD in the taxable account, JEPI in the Roth, same dollars, same yields. Dramatically different after-tax outcome over 20 years. There is one last detail people get emotional about. Monthly payouts versus quarterly. JEPI and JEPQ pay monthly. SCHD and VYM pay quarterly in March, June, September, and December. Many beginners feel like monthly is better. 12 checks beat 4 checks. But the total annual income is identical at the same yield. The frequency does not change the math. It only changes the rhythm. If you are retired and living off your dividends, monthly distributions are easier to budget against. If you are accumulating and reinvesting, the frequency does not matter at all. Brokerages automatically reinvest quarterly payouts the same week they are declared. The compounding does not care. Pick the rhythm that fits your life, but never pay extra for monthly. Higher expense ratios for monthly payouts are not worth a single basis point. The math is the same. The investors who actually build dividend wealth are the ones who automate the process. Set up a recurring transfer from your checking account to your brokerage every payday. Enable dividend reinvestment, also called JEPI. Pick one or two ETFs and stop looking. Carla does this. Maya does this. Diana will do this once the credit card debt is gone. The investors who fail are the ones who try to time the market. They wait for the dip. They wait for the rally. They wait for clarity. The clarity never comes. The dollars never get invested. The dividend stream never builds. Automation removes the emotion from the equation. Boring beats brilliant in this game every single time. Now here is the part that will quietly destroy your assumptions. Let us run Carla and John forward 20 years. Carla invests $400,000 today in SCHD at 3.2%. Yield. Her dividend grows at 9% a year. She reinvests every payout for the first 10 years and lets the share price compound. In year 20, her portfolio is worth approximately $1,700,000. Her annual dividend is approximately $95,000, about $7,900 per month. Her yield on her original $400,000 is now 23%. 23% yield on cost. John invests $400,000 today in JEPI at 8%. His dividend does not grow. His NAV stays roughly flat at best. He pays ordinary income tax on every distribution. In year 20, John's portfolio is still worth approximately $400,000. His annual dividend is still approximately $32,000, about $2,600 per month gross. After ordinary income tax at his 32% bracket, closer to $1,700 per month. Carla is making 4 times the after-tax income John is making, from the same starting capital, after 20 years. This is the inversion most people never see coming. The patient dividend growth investor earned less in year 1 and more. In every year after, the high-yield investor earned more in year 1 and got passed before year 15. Run the numbers. Most people refuse to. The reason is not financial. The reason is psychological. The high-yield investor wants the dopamine of seeing $2,600 hit the account every month right now. The dividend growth investor accepts $1,060 now and trusts the math. Patience is the entire edge. There is nothing else to it. Year 1, Carla loses. Year 5, Carla loses. Year 10, Carla catches up. Year 15, Carla passes. Year 20, Carla is 4 times ahead. That is the entire story of dividend investing in one paragraph. So here is what we know. $1,000 a month in dividends takes $109,000 to $545,000 depending on yield. $3,000 a month takes $327,000 to $1.6 million. $10,000 a month takes $1,090,000 to $5.5 million. The lower the principal you need, the higher the hidden risk you are taking. NAV erosion, ordinary income tax. Capped upside, expense ratio, lost compounding. Every shortcut has a cost. The longest road is also the safest road. SCHD does not make you rich next year. SCHD makes you rich in 15 years. If you are wondering whether to chase yield or grow yield, ask yourself one question. Where do you want to be in 20 years? Because the dividend income you earn in year 20 is decided by the ETF you buy in year 1. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch. Subscribe to Wealth Logic and hit the bell. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day.